Exercise, as a concept, is a modern invention. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors never went for a jog. They never lifted weights. They never did push-ups for fun. The idea of moving your body for the purpose of becoming healthier or more attractive would have been completely alien to them. And yet they were stronger, leaner, and more physically capable than almost any modern human alive today. Think about what that means. For roughly 300,000 years, anatomically modern humans were in extraordinary physical shape without doing a single thing that resembles modern exercise. They didn't train. They didn't track. They didn't have routines. They just lived. The leading theory is that the human body evolved to move constantly at low intensity for most of the day, with occasional bursts of high intensity when life demanded it. This is what Lieberman calls persistence hunting, the ability to chase prey for hours until it collapsed from exhaustion, a strategy that made Homo sapiens one of the most successful hunters on the planet. Walking, carrying, climbing, digging, crouching, lifting children, sprinting away from danger. The average hunter-gatherer adult walked between 7 and 12 kilometers a day, often carrying significant weight. They squatted instead of sitting. They climbed trees for honey. They threw spears. They butchered animals by hand. By the time modern humans showed up, the human body wasn't designed to be still. It was designed to be in motion almost constantly. The question is, when did our ancestors stop moving by necessity and start moving on purpose? In 1934, archaeologists working in Egypt found something strange on the walls of tombs in Beni Hassan, dating to around 2000 BCE. The paintings showed people performing what looked like wrestling moves, in a specific sequence with two participants going through hundreds of paired positions. These weren't drawings of an actual fight, they were instructional. Step by step, like a training manual carved into a wall. This is one of the oldest pieces of physical evidence we have of humans treating physical movement as a learned skill, practiced and refined for its own sake. Around the same time in ancient Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh describes the hero wrestling Enkidu in a contest of strength. Strength wasn't just useful anymore, it was something to be cultivated and shown off. And they aren't the only ones. About 1500 years later, the Greeks took it further than anyone had before. The site is called Olympia. Around 776 BCE, the first Olympic Games were held there, and what happened at those games changed how humans related to their bodies forever. Athletes trained for years specifically to compete. They had coaches, they had diets, they had specialized exercises, they lifted stones, they ran distances, they wrestled and boxed and threw discs and javelins. The Greeks invented the gymnasium, a word that literally means school for naked exercise, where men spent hours every day developing their physiques. Physical training became part of being a citizen. It was philosophy. It was civic duty. It was art. This is where the historian Jason Koenig comes in. Koenig has spent his career studying the culture of athletics in the ancient world, and his argument is something most modern fitness enthusiasts have never thought about. He says the Greeks weren't training to be healthy. They were training to be beautiful, the aesthetic ideal of the muscular male body, the proportions that classical sculptors carved into marble, the standards we still hold today. All of it came out of a culture that saw the physical body as a moral and spiritual project. His argument is simple. Before the Greeks, exercise was either practical, like hunting and fighting, or ritualistic, like ceremonial dances. The Greeks were the first civilization to systematically train their bodies for the purpose of looking a certain way. They were the first humans to stand in front of something like a mirror and say, "My body should be different." They invented the idea that you could sculpt yourself, that physical perfection was a goal worth pursuing, that the way your body looked said something about who you were as a person. If Koenig is right, the whole story of fitness changes. The gym wasn't invented to make us healthy. It was invented to make us look like statues. Everything that followed, the bodybuilding magazines, the protein powders, the mirrors on every wall of every gym, came downstream of an idea the Greeks invented 2,500 years ago, that your body is a project and you are the artist. By around 200 BCE, the evidence stops being theoretical. The Romans inherited Greek athletic culture and turned it into something even more organized. Roman soldiers followed strict training regimens. They marched 20 miles a day in full armor. They practiced sword work for hours. They had specific exercises for grip strength, core stability, and endurance. The Roman writer Galen, one of the most influential physicians in history, wrote detailed treatises on exercise around 175 CE. Before Galen, Hippocrates had already linked exercise to health 500 years earlier, establishing the foundation of exercise as medicine. Galen built on this, recommending specific routines for different body types. He prescribed exercise as medicine. He even invented something that looked remarkably like modern interval training. By that point, humans weren't just exercising. They were doing it scientifically. From there, physical training becomes embedded in every civilization that builds an army. The Spartans trained boys from the age of 7. The samurai of Japan spent their lives in physical conditioning. The Mongol horsemen developed extraordinary endurance through constant riding. The medieval knights trained for combat from childhood. But here's what's important. In all of these cases, the training had a purpose. You were training to fight, to survive, to defend, to win. Exercise for its own sake, exercise to look good or feel better, almost completely disappeared after the fall of Rome. For about 1,500 years, the idea that ordinary people should work out for personal benefit was almost completely gone from human civilization. It only came back in the last 200 years. So here's the full picture. About 300,000 years ago, humans lived in bodies that moved constantly without ever exercising. About 4,000 years ago, the Egyptians started painting training manuals on tomb walls. About 2,800 years ago, the Greeks invented the gymnasium and the idea of training for beauty. About 2,000 years ago, the Romans turned it into a science. And about 200 years ago, in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, when humans suddenly stopped moving for the first time in our species' history, we had to reinvent the gym from scratch. Interestingly, Lieberman's research has shown that modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, who still live the way humans lived for most of our history, walk an average of around 14,000 steps per day without ever thinking about it. Hermann Ponzer at Duke University, who has conducted extensive metabolic research with the Hadza, found that despite their high activity levels, their daily caloric expenditure is remarkably similar to sedentary Americans. Their bodies are simply more efficient at using energy. The fitness goal that costs you a smartwatch and a monthly subscription is something they hit every day before lunch. Exercise didn't show up because humans wanted to be healthy. There's a real chance it showed up because humans built a world where we don't have to move anymore. We sit in chairs, we drive in cars, we work at desks, we carry nothing, we climb nothing, we chase nothing. And our bodies designed for constant low-intensity movement started falling apart. The gym is what we built to replace the life we accidentally engineered away. Every time you force yourself to go work out, you're doing something a primate on the savannah would have found completely insane. You're paying money to recreate, in a building, for 1 hour, the kind of movement that used to be the entire texture of human life. The treadmill replaces the walk to water. The squat rack replaces lifting children. The pull-up bar replaces climbing trees. The weights replace carrying meat home from a hunt. The shoes got fancier. The equipment got more complicated. The mirrors got bigger. But the impulse is the same one your ancestors lived inside without ever naming it. We were built to move. We just built a world that wouldn't let us.